Perfect. So welcome everyone to this session, Catalyst 2030, Social Entrepreneurs Collaborating to Accelerate Progress, and to the SDGs of the Global Social Economy Forum. I will ask all of you to mute your microphone to make sure that we can all hear our important guests and the discussion during this event. So for your information, this session is recorded and will be available on the GSEF website soon. My name is Sarah Prince-Robin. I work in a French ministry, working on social and solidarity economy, and I am a proud member of Catalyst 2030. So now we'll just put a short end to explain what we're going to do today. So according to the Social Progress Index, at the current rate of progress, the SDGs will not be achieved until 2094, which is 64 years after the deadline set by the UN. So of course, also the COVID-19 now makes the projections sound optimistic. We have main challenges to tackle, such as the lack of resources, of coordination as well, and disconnection between funding models and the needs on the ground. So Catalyst 2030 is a network of high-performing social entrepreneurs and innovators who have implemented innovations at scale. Our community includes leading social entrepreneurs recognized by Ashoka, Inquiry Green, the Schwab Foundation, the Skoll Foundation, and other global networks of social entrepreneurs. Next. It is rapidly expanding to include government, funders, bilateral institutions, multilateral institutions, and others seeking the achievements, of course, of social sustainable development goals. Next. And Catalyst 2030 members are active in 176 countries, directly reaching 1 in every 10 people on the planet, and a much higher proportion of those most at risk of being left behind. So members cover 100% of SDGs and 90% of SDG targets. They have already helped deliver significant progress on challenges in many areas, validating track record and providing methods in system change. More than 50% of our members have implemented programs on the country level, and nearly 30% of organizations have succeeded in driving the passage of new policies. Next slide, please. Our mission is to catalyze collaboration across sectors to unleash collective potential for global system change. The vision really is to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 through an unprecedented mobilization of social entrepreneurs, partners, and resources. And our core values are people and nature at the center, co-creative mindset, collaborative leadership, humble audacity, and of course, a spirit of generosity. Next. The approach to collectively achieve the SDGs by 2030 is to catalyze collaboration, change the ecosystem, fuel the movement, build and maintain the movement foundation. Next, please. So we have different working groups that have been created. The working groups include membership, communication, collaboration, impact and client-driven development, funding, government and UN system, external stakeholders, donors, COVID-19, and peace. Next, please. Some examples of initiatives that these working groups have been working on. It's like concrete measures and data that enable key stakeholders to make better decisions toward achieving the SDGs, activities aimed at shifting funders' mental models and behaviors toward embracing system change, funding best practices. Of course, we had a COVID-19 response support, and also we've done a Catalysing Change campaign that I will present later. Next. We also have some specific issue-based groups such as education, agriculture, gender, livelihood, and youth. Also, next, what we have is that Catalyst 2030 has also been establishing regional chapters, enabling social entrepreneurs within defined geographic regions that share culture or languages to collaborate. The aim is to develop a localized movement of social entrepreneurs who can establish best practices for the specific region. So you're please welcome. Please. What we have also is country chapters that are similar to regional chapters, but they focus on the social entrepreneurs ecosystem in a particular country. The aim to harness the expertise of social entrepreneurs to enable the specific policy changes for the sector to thrive in that economy. Next. What we have also is some task force. There are temporary member groups which take on a specific task for Catalyst to achieve part of the overall strategy. So current task force include, for example, values and culture, as well as infographics. Next, please. finally, what we have is a collaboration corner. It enables to connect with others on specific topics such as SDG, geographic, and or target group to improve their own impact and collaborate on those topics like youth, education, of training footprint. Next, please. So I'm going to explain now the Catalysing Change campaign that has led to the launch of an important report on July 8th during a fireside chat with Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina Mohammed. The Catalysing Change campaign included more than 4,000 participants from 131 countries and 1,600 organizations, leading to 85 sessions organized. The target is to disseminate the report to 100,000 of key stakeholders of the social economy and larger, and of course, to ensure that we can meet the recommendation. Next, please. So now in phase 2, the Catalysing Change campaign will highlight the recommendation made in the report, getting from crisis to system change, advice to leaders in a time of COVID, in a series of discussions with key policymakers with the objective of transforming the recommendation into workable and concrete action. Phase 2 of the campaign will take on a 3-pronged approach that you'll be free to join whenever it happens. Fireside chat, an informal chat between a moderator and policymakers, leaders, and topic experts. You also have expert hours. It's a conversation with a sector leader, deep diving into a specific topic issue based on the recommendation from phase 1 to the campaign. The discussions will focus on the practicalities and challenges of implementing the issue recommendation in practice. And finally, you have Marketplace Collaboration Corner. To create a marketplace or collaboration corner on your specific issue discussed, challenge, and co-create systemic change with like-minded innovators. So this is a presentation of Catalyst, and I'm very happy to welcome the panelists of the session that are members of Catalyst 2030 and will explain, their work in making the SDG more affordable, and hope we will reach them by 2030. So our panelists are Sue Riddlestone, Valeria Duflo, Jacob Matthew, Mariam Uwais, and Manmeet Mehta. How are we going to proceed? So we'll have 3 first speakers and then a Q&A session, then the 2 other speakers and another Q&A question. So please write your questions directly on the chat, and I will ask the speakers just after in the Q&A session. So let me introduce the first panelist. Sue Riddlestone, is co-founder and chief executive of Bioregional, and a Skull Schwab and Ashoka award-winning social entrepreneur. Sue draws on the work of Bioregional and partners to change policy and industry practice from zero carbon policy to eco-towns and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. In 2013, Sue was awarded one of the UK's highest honor, an OBE, for her work on sustainable business and the London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games. Sue is a founding member of Catalyst 2030 and co-chair of Working Group 6 on UN and countries. So, Sue, how can we achieve a system change in your experience? What are the key things needed for successful partnerships between governments and social entrepreneurs? How are social entrepreneurs working together to identify the key ways that we can achieve system change through Catalyst 2030? Sue, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sarah. And Sarah is the other co-chair of Working Group 6. Susanna, are you able to show the slide? I've got 3 picture slides for you to look at. First of all, in my experience you can see here a picture of Eco Village that we created, which is where I'm speaking from today in London. And that's an example of a practical project where we're dealing with our issue, which is addressing climate change and sustainability. How can we live well in our cities, our communities, so that we're living well within the natural limits of our planet, what we call at Bioregional One Planet Living. And having created this project, there was a lot of interest, and we do continue to build sustainable homes and work on sustainable products. But to make system change, we need to actually look at policy and enabling other people. So from my experience, what we did was we made this framework called One Planet Living with the 10 principles in the colours you can see there, and made that freely available for anyone to use. So it's being used all around the world in 30 billion of real estate development. It's being used by cities, by companies. And so it's that's one way to achieve system change, make your solution available so that other people can do it without actually having you to come and help them. And we offer training if people feel they need. There's lots of things digitally available, but if people feel they need a bit more help, we offer a training course. And we also work with people if they want to pay us to work with them to help them, and a lot of people do. But also we need to change policy and practice to change the systems that have led to our cities not being sustainable and our homes not being sustainable. So ways that we've worked on that, or I've worked on that through our work at Bioregional, is getting planning policies changed here in the UK and trying to influence them internationally through organisations like the UN Global Compact and the One Planet Network and the Green Building Council. So these networks that we can all join in with to pull together and collaborate to make a bigger change. And then another thing that we worked on was taking our solutions and working in the big group of the Rio +20 process at the United Nations from 2011 to 2012, where we attended every meeting and showed, oh, it can be done, and influenced the diplomats with what was really possible, and even just explaining how do we explain sustainability to them very simply at breakfast briefings and things. So that was a chance to be very influential and impactful. And we were championing the Sustainable Development Goals idea with the women from the governments of Colombia, Guatemala and Peru, and held the first side event at the UN about it. And so we managed to get system change in terms of, we even had a role as ended up having a role from knowing nothing about the UN. By 2015, or 2013, we were the UN global focal point for the NGO group for Goal 12, or for sustainable consumption and production, and we proposed text and got text written in, and now this is agreed by all governments of the world. So we're very passionate about the SDGs, and so that's how we have worked from our organisation, or using our solutions to get change. But moving on to Catalyst, next slide please. I love Catalyst 2030 because we're all pulling together to collaborate. As Sarah said, we're not going to achieve the SDGs at this rate, so we need to scale up our know-how, work with governments and get some bigger change and get more respect and acknowledgement of the social entrepreneurs at the United Nations level. So our group, this is our group, use a small picture there, but hopefully you can see Miriam, who's here, myself, Andrea, so we've got 5 governments in our group and also social entrepreneurs. And our goals for this year are to, or this coming 12 months, are to identify and progress 10 partnerships between social entrepreneurs and social innovators and governments to scale up the know-how and the solutions. And secondly, to try to get the United Nations to pay more attention to social entrepreneurs, because we sort of fall between, you can either be in the major groups, you can either be an NGO or a business. They don't seem to recognise the bit in between, which is what we are, which is a very entrepreneurial, practical, on the ground solutions that can be scaled. So we're working to get high-level advisors at the UN and nationally, and the sort of policy framing support. So those are our goals. And in terms of, there's a lot of people who've done a lot of thinking about what are the best ways to work with governments. And coming from a position, we've had some workshops on this through Catalyst, and some of the things that came out is not just kind of rocking up and talking to the government and saying, well, you should adopt our solution, and getting all sort of cross about it, but to actually say, oh, I understand, you know, you've got a priority to work on this, we have a solution for that, or we know how to do that, we're offering to help you, we have know-how, and to approach it in a spirit of partnership, collaboration and humility. And there are some great tools. Spring Impact have been analysing what are the best ways to do this, and there is, I'll find the link and share it with you, it's new out this week even, with advice on that. So next slide please. So then Sarah spoke about the Catalysing Change report, so I just wanted to share with you how we worked on that. Particularly a group of us who work on climate and environment had a series of roundtables which anyone could attend, And so this is the process of, well, how can we create these collaborations? So we basically, a few people said, oh, I'd like to present what I do. And then we had breakout groups in Zoom chat rooms where we talked about how to, we sort of drew out themes, groupings of areas of work. So you can see here, obviously, because I was in the group, we talked about the built environment and cities and sustainable living. But we also talked about rural mobility and transportation. It's a very important issue. So two of our group, Andrea, who works on healthcare solutions using motorbikes and training and building capacity to get that last mile delivery of healthcare and get people to clinics, and Susan, who works on bicycles as a solution that are very rugged and can work in on rural roads. So together, what ended up happening about that is the Transport and Mobility Alliance with some key policy asks, and Susan and Andrea teaming up and now looking for others to join, try to ask for some, or to draw attention to decision makers at the government level of what's needed, and start to try to get them to start thinking about transport and mobility as an important issue to help us deliver the SDGs. So not driving big white Land Rovers, but more sustainable solutions. And so these are some of the wonderful things that are coming out, which we're now following up on. So I hope I've answered your questions, Sarah, and look forward to any questions anyone else has.
Yes, perfect too, and thank you very much for your important work with Catalyst. We'll see later if we have any Q&A from the chat, but for the moment, I'm going to give the floor to Valeria Duclos. She's the co-founder of Venezia Authentica and Over-Tourism Solutions. She's a social entrepreneur currently working on transforming the tourism industry, big issue, at the root through digital social innovation and systemic transformation. With over 10 years experience, creating a positive impact in a diverse range of industries and geographies, and a background in science, business, and social innovation, Valeria is also committed to helping individuals and organizations to be forces for good. She does so through advising, training, and community building. She's a fervent believer in the power of collaboration and a proud member of Catalyst 2030. So Valeria, why is transforming tourism key to reaching the SDG? What work have you been doing to do so? Which results and which impact, of course, has COVID-19 had on the tourist sector and on your work as itself? Also, could you tell us more about your current objectives and which strategies you are pursuing to reach them? How is being a member of Catalyst 2030 helping you advance your issue? And finally, how can the audience help and get engaged? Thank you, Valeria.
Thanks, Sarah, and hi, everybody. So, although tourism is often an overlooked sector, considered with some like an industry that is less serious, it's really key to reaching the SDGs for two main reasons. It's one of the world's major economic sectors. It has a massive footprint as it touches virtually every SDGs. Prior to COVID-19, tourism was one of the biggest industries in the world. It was growing faster than the global GDP, accounting for 10% of global GDP and jobs worldwide. It represented like a massive share of economies, both in developed and developing countries, and was creating 1 job out of 4 in the past 5 years. That means that tourism was providing livelihood for many millions in both developing and developed economies. And many of those people working in tourism were classically vulnerable people, women, informal workers, and people working in MSMEs, which are shouldering 80% of the tourism industry. However, despite this potential that tourism has, it was already causing more harm than good. Like, if tourism can bring economic development and other benefits to host communities, it also brings a wide range of hidden costs that we often do not mention. Wherever tourism exists, the industry places an invisible burden on destinations, on the places where people live. When the number of visitors is low, the negative impact of tourism usually is not seen, so that's why it goes largely unnoticed. However, the negative impact of tourism cannot be ignored when you start having high level of arrivals. And we classically consider it successful. And that, like if you check the headlines in the past years, in the summers and so on, you would see how like a highly developed sector would lead like residents to protests, would impoverish them, displace them, would create a loss of economic diversity, damage the environment, the cultural and natural heritage, and basically damage the community way of life, while also increasing the impact of climate change. But it's not all negative, because with such a huge footprint, tourism really has the potential to be a driving force for the SDGs. And I do believe that with the right frameworks, the right KPIs, the right mindsets in place, it is possible to move from what is now an extractive industry to one that deeply benefits visitors, residents, and contribute to the preservation and the regenerations of the places where we live and travel. And that's not just a theory of mine and my team. Like, for example, through our work on the ground here in Venice, Italy, the poster child of the negative impact of tourism, through our social enterprise, Venezia Authentica, that Sarah was mentioning earlier, we have created and tested a localist model, a system that helps preserve decent jobs for the community, increase the retention of tourism revenue in the local economy, preventing people from being impoverished and displaced. That also preserves the cultural and natural heritage by doing things like encouraging responsible consumption and production. That thank you, Sue, we have as very important SDGs to look for, and allowing the adoption of more sustainable travel habits, less flying, cruising, and so on, while improving the experience of visitors. So in another 5 years, with our work, we managed to reach over 60 million people, support 150 local businesses that have earned together an increased income of around 3 million yearly. And that what we think that was the model was working, it was growing, it was making an impact. And so as Venice is like the case study of what a lot of pressure on the community due to tourism can do, we were looking at like, okay, what's happening in Venice is a symptom of a systemic issue. So what needs to be done is that to change the problem at the root. So the first way we wanted to go about that was to help change policies and spread this model that we had created, because it's highly adaptable and can be used in different destinations. But then COVID-19 struck. So obviously, as you all know, that completely changed what's happening in tourism now. We went from an industry that was growing faster, that the global GDP never seemed to ever stop, to being an industry that was completely at a halt. Created a lot of damages, like on people right now, like it has impacted many economies, livelihoods, public services, opportunities on all continents. The entire value chain of tourism, which is extremely widespread, have been touched. So the impact has been catastrophic, both on livelihoods and also on our culture and natural heritage. Just to give you a quick idea of how bad it is on the livelihood, there's 100 million tourism jobs that are at risk, and another 144 million jobs which are correlated to tourism that are at risk with this crisis, and many of which are small businesses, are people who are very vulnerable. So it's putting a burden on our communities that is extremely, extremely difficult. We're going back decades in development. Women, for example, which are 54% of the tourism workforce, are extremely vulnerable in this time. There's also an impact that goes beyond the economic one. There's impact on our nature and culture because of the halt of tourism. The funding for biodiversity conservation has been halted. And so there's already an increase in poaching, looting, concession of bushmeat, for example, but also all form of heritage, festivals, markets, and so on have stopped, which means that people who are, for example, part of the creative economy that Jacob is going to mention later are no longer able to sell their goods. And so they also have been pushed in poverty. So the COVID-19 crisis has therefore added to that sector of tourism numerous other challenges. That means that not only do we need to focus on transforming the tourism, but we also need to focus on recovering the livelihood that tourism was providing to people around the world. The good news is that government have taken notice of the importance, the socioeconomic importance of the sector now, and that we are now presented what I really believe to be a historic opportunity to transform it. The projections say, the forecast said that we have about 2-3 years before tourism starts again the way it used to be, which we don't want. So that means to us that we have 2-3 years to transform tourism before people try to go back to the way it was and we end up locked in the old way and being unable to tap into the potential of tourism to reach the SDGs. So this is a very, very big task, but I mean, we are social innovators, so we see it as an opportunity. However, we now are shifting our focus because we think it's no longer possible to go in small incremental changes, pushing just a model, but we need to widespread the adoption of everybody's models everywhere in the world. So that's why we focused we change our focus to fostering collective action and international collaboration through doing several things: widespread policy change, like sharing the models, like for example, Sue has my model and others, and facilitate co-creation and support existing program. And it's at work. Catalyst 2030, which was already extremely helpful in our previous configuration, is exceptionally needed, because what we need is to be able to quickly map potential collaborator to accelerate change, is to be able to access policymakers, leaders, and like Catalyst 2030 through campaign, also through the creation of reports that are creating icebreakers and making that easier. They're making it easier to start a conversation. We also need to be able to have an ecosystem that is more ready, more favorable for social innovation. And again, here, the work that the working group is doing, that the regional groups are doing, it's necessary to make it easier for all of us to make the impact in the system that we're tackling. So I really believe that Catalyst is a wonderful initiative that is needed if we want to reach our objective to transfer systems, tourism and beyond. And I really hope that you guys are going to join us to answer your last question, Sarah, to help us. Well, it's really early stage, this new initiatives that we have to transform tourism by being like a honest broker and fostering collaborative impact. So we're looking for funders, we're looking for partners. So if you are interested in getting engaged with this initiative or to learn more, so just please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to talk and see how we can advance our common interests.
Thank you, Valeria. And you will have to talk in your Q&A session because we just had a question for you. But first, we're going to hear Jacob. So trained as an industrial designer, Jacob Matthew played a key role in the development of the organized retail sector in India, and then currently works as CEO of Industry Foundation and Design Principal Impact Edge, its social enterprise lab at Srishti Minapol Institute of Art, Technology and Design, Bangalore, India. Design and entrepreneurship at the bottom of economic pyramid to transform society in India and Africa. We're going to listen to a video because we wanted to make sure that Jacob didn't have any internet problems. So don't worry, Jacob is still there for the Q&A question if you have any. So our question were to Jacob: how has formalizing informal workers played out in the COVID-19 crisis? How have collaboration within the Catalyst 2030 network enhanced your effectiveness? And how does what you do engage with government and government programs? So we'll just kind of listen with the video of Jacob, and we'll get back to you just afterwards.
Industry Foundation works with rural communities of artisanal producers and organizes them into companies and enterprises, moving them from what you call informal sector to formal sector through a combination of good design, lean manufacturing and efficient manufacturing processes, and access to market. we connect these rural groups to global brands and to national brands, providing for consistent income. And because we work with women, there is a direct effect on society and on the community in terms of prosperity and in terms of upliftment. We impact about 5 of the SDGs directly and another 8 indirectly. Since these enterprises are owned by the people working in them, elements of democratic working, principles of social justice are built into the fabric of these enterprises, and they then translate into the interactions of these artisans into the larger communities that they belong to, strengthening social justice institutions as well. One of the big advantages of bringing people into groups, aggregating people into groups, is the ability to connect them to benefits that the governments very often offer. Coming together gives them an element of security, a network of people that they can get in touch with and talk to. So in the recent COVID crisis, for example, India had this extended lockdown, which was announced suddenly. And all over the country, you had literally millions of migrants having to rush home. In the case of these enterprises that we had sort of incubated, they did not face any of this distress. Any of them who needed relief were provided with relief. And within days of the lockdown being announced, there were support groups that were formed. Supervisors calling in every woman in the enterprise every other day to check in on them, to find out how they were doing. We were also able to disseminate information on the COVID crisis, the best way to take care of themselves, everything from wearing masks to social distancing, to even making masks themselves and then distributing it to their families and to their neighbors. And very soon, even before the lift of lockdown, some kind of production activity and income generation started. End result was that about the 1,000 plus people that we work with enjoyed pretty much the same sort of benefits and status that people in the organized sector enjoy. A lot of this is possible because of the partnerships that we have with other members of the Catalyst 2030 group. A very important part of the work that we do is how do we measure, register, and track what we are doing. One of our partners in Catalyst 2030, Socion, has something called the Participatory Digital Attestation application, a mobile-based application that works on QR codes. Within 3 years, we will have an enormous amount of data on the number of people who've gone through capacity building programs, what kind of programs they've done, when they have done that, all in a digital form. That will really help us demonstrate the differences that women who are organized in these groups have over women who are not organized in such groups. We are working with a few other partners in terms of apps for traceability and transparency of supply chains. Again, many modern retailers are asking for value chain transparency. These partnerships help us in that. Lastly, I would look at how we work with government and how something like this can be scaled. So we are working with something called the National Bamboo Mission in India. It's a federal government or central government initiative. And this initiative is then taken through in the states by the state bamboo missions. This is about growing bamboo, cultivating bamboo, and making sure that the natural resource is managed. And what we get can be forest stewardship certified bamboo, which then major retailers in the world can buy. We organize indigenous communities into these groups that then use techniques of weaving, solid wood, and so on, to make a range of products. The partnership with the government has us interacting with the federal government, with state governments, and with very local governments. Through this, we've been able to mobilize resources, both in terms of equipment and in terms of space and in terms of land for plantations. If successful and when successful, this model can be scaled across multiple states of India. And further, this model can also be applied in other value chains as an example of how public sector, the government, the private sector, enterprise and markets, the civil sector, that's organizations like ours or the plural sector, and community or people can come together to create system level change. Thank you. So if I could just add to this.
Perfect.
One is that we work across multiple value chains. So we work with handloom and cotton value chains in Ethiopia, for example, where we work with the federal government Ministry of Trade and Investment. We work with, there's an institute called ITEX, the Institute for Textile Technology and Design, in a place called Bahardar. So these sort of combinations, of getting in various government and government-supported institutions can actually help grow this. The other value chains that we work in are natural fibers like banana. And again, in Ethiopia, we're hoping to set up a project with the local government of the SNNPR in NSET, which is a food security crop. But again, working very closely with local partners. So I'm really excited about the partnerships that the Catalyst 2030 is throwing up and the potential that it has for scale. And one of the things that Sarah shared in a note was that through Catalyst 2030, we are reaching something like 1 in 10 people on the planet, right, Sarah? I mean, that is an incredible reach, and that, along with governments, could do quite a bit in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacob. And you're one of the 3 panelists that we got that were talking about specific projects. Actually, with Catalyst and the working group 6 that we're co-chairing, as Sue mentioned earlier, we're looking for other projects that could be a partnership with government and that could be scalable. So please do not hesitate. You have on the chat the email address to join Catalyst. So do not hesitate. We're just going to start a few first Q&A session. I just have one question for now, so do not hesitate to put your question on the chat. It is Sonia, I think from Canada, or with Wells. Are there resources available for the sustainable tourism model, Valeria, that you were talking about? And she thought that this is of particular interest for her. So please, Valeria, the floor is yours.
Thanks for the question. Well, so our initial focus, like I was quickly mentioning earlier with over-tourism solution, was to take that model, make it a framework, and work on like sharing it in an open way and so on. But with the current crisis, we refocused because we're like, it's not enough to focus on scaling only this model. We also need to have several models. For example, Sue, she's also working in tourism. She's helping the construction of buildings, for example, that are that are creating zero emission. This is also essential. And there are many other people that are tackling other areas that our model does not tackle. So we move from focusing on scaling that framework to finding a way to identifying a few that are crucial to answer the key issues in tourism and like share those all together. So to answer your question, there's not yet a formalized document, but it is coming. It's part of the plan, but it's going to be as part of a collective document, most probably. And you can just like reach out to me and I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, exactly. Sue or Jacob, do you want to add anything? We have just a couple of minutes on our schedule. Let me know.
Well, I guess it would just be nice, as you said, just re-emphasising this is a fantastic forum, and if anyone attending wants to join in, Catalyst 2030 just keeps growing all the time, and this is such an opportunity for massive collaboration, and here is it's being set up with a framing that we can work within, but still be social entrepreneurs. It's social entrepreneur led. So this is quite different and exciting, and welcome anyone who wants to get involved.
I could add, what's also very special about Catalyst 2030 is that it's a group of volunteers. It's completely voluntary. And it's very interesting to see how in a very short time, structuring of a movement has happened. And I think one of the side effects, as it were, of Catalyst 2030 is how do you get people together? How do you sort of create the organizational structures that remove friction? And then how do you get it quickly into action? So I think this is also a very interesting way in which the whole thing is developing, and that's why I'm in.
Thank you for both the very positive message. Now we'll go to the next panelist. So as a lawyer by profession, Maria Munowais is the current social advisor to the President of Nigeria, working on social investment. She was the Outstanding Public Social Entrepreneur Schwab Awardee for 2019 and is a member of Catalyst 2030. She recently commenced a project aimed at addressing and resolving the cross-cutting challenges that negatively impact on children at risk in Nigeria. So Mariam, thank you for being here. Could you tell us more about this project and what are the main challenges that you need to tackle? You need to unmute, Mariam? Yes, perfect.
Okay. So good morning, everybody. I feel really honored and privileged to be part of this awesome group, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share what is ahead of us in my country relating to the project that we're about to commence, or we've actually commenced. Nigeria currently has approximately over 13.2 million children out of school, and 69% of them are up north. Out of this 69%, the majority are children that you call the Almajiri, the children that have, they migrate with gatekeepers that are called malams to go and learn, but they end up really socially excluded. They do a lot of begging. They're not with their parents, so there's hardly any welfare, any support, and they're deprived of education and so many other important critical aspects that will support and nurture their potential in growing up. So the system is characterized by chronic poverty and abuse and exploitation. And so one of the challenges we have is how to address this huge phenomenon, because they are as much Nigerian as we are. They deserve the education, they need the support, the health, the welfare, they need a home and the support that can come from government. And what we're trying to do is to address that even at this point in time. Now with the COVID, because there has been a lot of migration, a lot of these children were taken to various states. Nigeria is a federation, and we have, these children constitute maybe 7% of the entire population, and they were just being moved back by state governments to their states of origin with just a declaration that they must be put in school. And these children range from the ages of 4 to the ages of 17. So they've been, it was expected that there would just be a magic wand and they would move back into schools and just settle in. What we're trying to do from my office is to ensure that when they do go back to school, they at least understand what is going on in the classroom. Because you can't take back children that are streetwise into a classroom that is already overwhelmed by numbers. We have challenges with teacher quality, and expect them to engage and remain in the classroom. So it's like a learning period of 9 months, whereby we're able to avail these children with literacy and numeracy. But beyond that, because many of them are much older than the children that will fit into classes 1 to 3, some of them are teenagers. We want to avail them financial literacy, entrepreneurship, critical thinking skills, life skills. We want to give them the opportunity to engage in sports, creativity, and this would be photography, arts, drama, dance. We're also trying to see if we can teach them rudiments of farming, depending on what aspect they seem interested, they are interested in. And we want to feed them, so we address their health and their nutritional needs. We're also we're bringing in psychologists to assess them and give them psychosocial support. We're having their eyes and their hearing examined so that we ensure that at least a lot of those concerns are addressed. After this period of 9 months, and of course we'll be collating data and also the geocoordinates. After this period of 9 months, we expect that we can monitor where they're going. I mean, what happens to them? Are they back in school? For how long? For good? Are they back on the streets? Why? What are they doing with their lives? So we're also forging very close alliances with the communities to make sure that we get the feedback that enables us to actually understand what the nuances are. Child poverty, understand what the triggers are, for remaining in school, for taking ownership of your lives, so that we can improve. Recall Nigeria is a country of over 200 million people, and we have had our fair share of conflicts and battles. We have the Boko Haram, and we do know that some of these children are actually fodder. They've actually been brought into that because they've been exposed to all these vagrancies. And it's just a responsibility that the federal government has to see that these children improve, have the opportunity to improve on their lives. And we need to keep a close watch on them. Nigeria being a federation, we have states. The responsibility actually for primary education, primary healthcare, empowerment, all of that is at state level. So what we are doing at federal level is providing a framework to ensure that the states form teams that at least have the minimum standards, and then we will coordinate what happens and continue to monitor and ensure that they are incentivized to engage with what we're offering at federal level. But the expertise will come from there. And we just will make sure that we have the right kind of people with empathy and compassion and the relevant skills to be able to work with those children. So briefly, this is what I've set out to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. And I think the last part, it's an amazing project, but when you say people with empathy and everything, I think it's the core of the values also of Catalyst 2030 and social entrepreneurship. So it's very important to mention it, also because you're part of on the government side. So it's really interesting to see that, the collaboration needs to be on both sides. And I'm sure this will be an amazing program. So we'll keep updated within the Catalyst community. Again, if you want to join, then and help Mariam and help all the social entrepreneurs in making those projects alive, please join us. Now we got the government side, and now we're going to the network side. Also because she's in the working group on cities. So Manmeet Mehta, she's the director of partnership and impact for Ashoka US. She has more than 15 years of experience in the corporate and social sector and has advised foundations, companies, and individuals on integrating system strategies into their financial portfolio. She funded Global Giving's online crowdfunding program, the Global Giving Accelerator, in 2007. The Accelerator was the first globally accessible mechanism for social entrepreneurs and nonprofits to access funding from the $270 billion philanthropic market. Today, she works to design partnerships and collaboration to accelerate systemic transformation. So Manmeet, could you tell us more about the role of social entrepreneurs in this historic moment, about inclusion and equity in building back better systems, change, and equity? Manmeet, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thanks for having me as part of this conversation. It's been interesting listening to Sue and Valeria and Jacob, whose work I knew a little of. So it's good to learn more details. So just to sort of emphasize, I work at Ashoka, which is a global network of systems changing social entrepreneurs, and we'll spend a couple of seconds on what we think systems change and social entrepreneurship, the idea of what it means to us. In a second, this is a unique moment. It's a once in a generation moment. I think that word has been thrown around really a lot over the last few months, but we have the overlapping crises of a global pandemic that is colliding with one of the most diverse global social justice, racial justice movements in the world. And at least in the US, this context has highlighted the broken systems around us and the inequities in the systems around education, around health, around an economy that just doesn't seem to work for, or around the health system that can't seem to care for all citizens equally. And amidst these overlapping crises is also an opportunity for catalytic reform, and that's optimistic. And I think that's why we're all here. So in this moment of catalytic reform, social entrepreneurs are critical. And in this sort of moment of emergency, almost, they are the first responders of these crises. And so that's why Ashoka exists. So systems change is about addressing the root causes of problems. It's not about putting a Band-Aid, which is valuable, but you can only put Band-Aids on cuts for so long. So ultimately you have to dig a little deeper. And so that's what, you've heard stories from the 4 social entrepreneurs in this group and how they're thinking about that. So these social entrepreneurs that look at root causes of the problem and try and understand what are the solutions that might work are the first responders we need to shape a better normal. Because what we've realized is our systems are broken. And so to advance better outcomes, to build back better, and to reimagine what normal can be is what we need. And that's what's going to help us accelerate to achieving the SDGs by 2030. And it's been a pleasure for Ashoka to sort of help the Catalyst 2030 members build this movement, because these are the people embedded in communities across the world that are going to be able to imagine and build back better systems that work for all of us. Now, why social entrepreneurs are critical in this moment is we've just talked a little bit about you've heard these stories. Social entrepreneurs are also not to sort of gloss over, are also embedded in communities. It's what, SSIR, the Stanford Social Innovation Review, recently released an article about proximate leadership. But that is fundamental. People that don't live the problem, that are not part of the community that experience the problem and are not able to collaborate with community are not able to get to solutions that may be transformative in all. The other thing you've heard in stories from Sue and Valeria and Jacob is that this work doesn't happen alone. You can't change systems just through one idea and one person. Collaboration is key and it's critical. And the other thing social entrepreneurs need, in addition to partners across the system, from government to other social entrepreneur peers to mentoring, are resources. And put all together, this is what's going to help us build back a better normal. But for this to happen, social entrepreneurs need a seat at the decision-making table. And so Sarah just alluded to the cities working group at Catalyst 2030. Now, that is builds on this idea of collaboration, which is key for transformative change. And so there are social entrepreneurs all across the world that are working with governments, right? You just heard some stories here in this group to help influence policy, reallocate resources, partner in different ways, create different types of markets, what Jacob and industry is trying to do, and ultimately move how systems work. What we are trying to do in the cities working group with Catalyst 2030 is bring together social entrepreneurs, and together we want to sort of highlight the work that's done at the city level. Now, why are we looking at cities? Because cities have become really practical mechanisms or practical platforms for societal action. They don't have a choice. There is a lived reality, whether you look at climate change, whether you look at job creation. These challenges are not theoretical, abstract in the future challenges. And many cities are already around the world leading the way on how do we tackle these. It's also the fact that they are really one of the most accessible ways for citizens to show up and make their voices heard. It is participatory solutions that can often emerge at the level of the cities are much more likely than citizens having influence at the highest levels of the government and access to influence policy at federal levels. And so we've seen that in the story that Jacob was trying to tell. And so when you look at climate and you look at how cities across the world are collaborating to act on climate and advance the SDGs around cleaner environment, when you look at the cities in how they are responding, where now let me speak for the US, there's been a fair abdication of responsibility by the federal government in the US. And so you have states and cities that are stepping up and figuring out their healthcare systems, figuring out how do you run schools online when big pockets of communities can't afford laptops at home, they don't have stable internet connections. So you already see all of this happening. And so what we're trying to do in this group is bring together the expertise of fellows, of social entrepreneurs in the Catalyst group to say, look, let's tell these stories. Let's figure out what are you doing that is succeeding at influencing policy, at influencing new service delivery, at influencing different ways of partnering at the level of the city. That brings the voices of communities to the conversation, that those solutions are shaped by everybody in the community and not just the same people that design the systems that are not working. So we're still in the early phases of gathering these stories, figuring out what are the best practices. So the idea is that we're then able to share back insights and strategies that have worked for others that may be able to step into that model as well. So I'm going to stop here. I'm not quite sure how long I spoke or if I have overrun my time, but again, you've had a few comments from Susanna and Sarah. If you are working at the city level government or the country level government in any way and have a story to share on what's working, please send us a note, and we would love to include you and learn from your insights in this collaboration.
Thank you very much, Manmeet. Yeah, I was just looking. We don't have any questions now, but maybe I'll go back to Mariam. If you could, make a call, and maybe Manmeet another call, more than just calling for any stories, to the people that are here today with us or that will look at the video. What could it be? Apart from reaching from us, but how can they? Can you explain what are you waiting for people who are looking at that? Is it only like to collaborate with you, or to explain stories? Do you need fundings as well? There are many people, because everybody needs money usually in the social economy, because the Global Social Economy Forum is a broad organization. There are people that are working in the social economy sector. You have people from cities, like you said, Mami, that are really important. There are governments like Mariam, you are. So both of you, what could you say to those people that are looking at you today, or maybe later when they catch up with the video?
Sure. I would say, from everything that I hear, yes, social entrepreneurs share, and I'm going to let Mariam and Valeria, Sue and Jacob chime in here, but from everything that we observe and hear back, we need to share more stories. One of the hypotheses of this group is that there is a reason why social entrepreneurs are not at the decision-making table, and one of the reasons is that not enough people know about their work, and there are not enough easy, accessible ways in which social entrepreneurs are able to access and influence partnerships and collaborations with government officials and find ways to collaborate on policy making or reshaping policy. If we can shift the narrative there. Second, resources is, I think, it's interesting. It's something that that is the reality. Yes, there's technical support. Yes, there's peer support that is critical, but ultimately social entrepreneurs also need resources to unlock their ability to do this work. And systems change, systems change is different from project-based work. So when you emphasize activities and you emphasize outputs and deliverables and shape philanthropy and funding and resources around the delivery of those outputs, it takes away from the ability of Sue and Jacob and Valeria and Mariam to be able to focus on a longer term shift in the system, whether it's through influencing policy takes time, and all of the other panelists can talk more on from their experience and how and when that happens. Mariam's in the thick of it right now. And we need funding that is flexible. We need funding that is unrestricted. We need funding that's multi-year, so that there is a shift from everyday firefighting and focus and delivery of activities to saying, how can we actually achieve this big goal, and refocus on that.
Yeah, thank you, Manmeet. I think that was a whole plan and very motivating, I guess, for people who are looking at us today. Mariam, maybe a final word on your side.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. I absolutely agree with Manmeet, and she just took the words out of my mouth, or she said it better than I ever could have. But resources are really required for this kind of work. And for me, we're still looking for resources, but also being part of Catalyst 2030 has opened up the vista for me. I've come across such amazing people doing such impactful work. So collaborations that would facilitate our leapfrogging into those spaces where the outcomes have proved that this is possible. All of us are dreamers. All of us want to see things that, we have such huge ambitions to improve things in our spaces, and to find that it's actually been done in certain places and how it's been done, is very encouraging, is very reassuring to those of us that are still trying to imagine a better world. So this is my call would be support in terms of finance, resources, and also the ideas that will ensure that this is sustainable, because we don't want to, the CSR thing, doesn't, it's social entrepreneurship. And one of the things we're trying to do in Nigeria is also trying to see how we can facilitate our social entrepreneurs working with government to make an impact. And even on this project, I have said that, the social entrepreneurs that exist in Nigeria who actually want to work with us should please come. We'll come up with a framework that will have, that will facilitate their attracting funding to work with the at-risk children project. We call it the ARC project. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I really hope that I can achieve as much as everybody here has been able to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam, and I'm sure you will achieve even more. I just want to suggest something. If anybody wants to jump in the audience, we just reactivated all the microphones. So I'll give like 20 seconds if anybody wants to, ask a question or comment. No, I don't hear anybody. If any one of the speaker wants to say again something, no, everything is like that. Yeah.
I think I would add to what Manmeet was talking about, that when it comes to working with government, it's sometimes very useful to find out what the government is already doing and how one can sort of partner in. If you go with something entirely new to the government, it's sometimes very difficult. It's like moving a mountain. But if it's something that they are already doing and interested in doing, it's a lot easier. But having said that, sometimes there is something that the government is already doing. Let me give you an example. So in India, we have a massive skilling program. And the focus on skilling in India was on employability, on making people employable. I think we spent about 5 years talking to people in the government and trying to convince them that in addition to skilling, you need entrepreneurship as well. Because if you train people for employability, they have to be employers out there. And we need to employ something like 15 million people every year. That's the number of young people coming into the market. 5 years later, the Ministry of Skilling is now called the Ministry of Skilling and Entrepreneurship. Now, I can't say that we did that, but I think triangulation, and when this message comes across at the government from different angles, chances of getting change made is a lot easier.
Thank you, Jacob. I think that's a good idea. As a member of a ministry, I can say that sometimes not starting from the scratch is indeed a good idea. Stu, I can see your hand.
Yes, listening to Miriam, and Valeria and Jacob, it's so inspiring, as you say, what everybody's doing, and Manmeet on your work at the sort of social entrepreneur systems level as well. And I think I just wanted to say that what seems to be happening in Catalyst 2030 by being in this network is we're kind of making introductions. So I've introduced a social entrepreneur I know who's working with street children to Miriam, as did Jeru, who used to work with children herself in India. And so we're sort of passing on and sort of sharing our know-how with a sort of open heart and helpfulness, and making connections to be stronger together. And that's been an interesting part of the work that we're doing. So it'd be just interesting to hear from anyone who's joined the call if they have any sort of things that struck them as we all spoke about, any other connections that they could see. Or any of the other panel.
Everybody's able to speak now. If anybody wants to join. If you're too shy, you can send an email if you're really too shy. But
I didn't realize, I think because we're working together, we often don't hear each other present our solutions. So when I heard Jacob talking about what he does, I remembered something we'd done in the UK where we worked with small producers to get them into national retailers. And I was like, oh, I really want to have a chat with you, Jacob, about how we did that. So, we fronted it up with the retailers, and then that created lots of jobs for even people who were just self-employed working on their own, and helped them to access new markets. So I just was very struck by the similarities there. Just shows you that we have a lot in common.
Yeah, I think that's one of the important things in Catalyst, to have many, not only values in common, but also ideas and projects. Well, this is nearly the end of our session. So I hope now you will all join Catalyst 2030. You have every information in the chat. You can go on the website as well and social networks. There's a Facebook page, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I want to thank you again, the Catalyst members that were speakers today. I also want to thank all the audience that is here today that will look at this video later. I do not forget you. And please do not hesitate to join the movement if you want. You can send emails or directly go on the website. And thank you very much. And I hope to see you again soon in a GSEF or a Catalyst 2030 session. Have a nice day or a nice evening, depending on where you're on the planet. Thank you.